Okay, we're back. So let's point out to these two problems with Bandura's theory. Problem number one is that it's very difficult to know, and the truth is true. It's very true. Trying to control the learning of a whole class or a whole group by saying we'll do something with one person and all the rest will follow inside the theory itself, right? So this theory is trying to get an efficient way for you to say, I can control everybody. That's what all these learning theories promise you, control. But in my opinion, they don't deliver. And number two, in the end, it's, to a large extent, it once again puts all the onus on the teacher. It's saying, well, what you need to do when you see a behavior you like, reinforce it, even if the kid is doing it already. And that has that clear danger of meaning that kids are not going to do anything unless they're rewarded for it. Sort of the intrinsic value of an activity seems to be gone. Okay, let's look briefly at some of Bandura's assumptions, and we'll go to some other theories. Let's go to the PowerPoint. Okay. Bandura is going to tell you, oh, thanks, that people are active because, which means that you bring your own attitudes and opinions to the environment. Okay? You understand what I'm saying? You're not just shaped. If I do something, right, I can't just push you around by saying, well, I'll just give you the reinforcements and done. You'll be whoever I shape you to be. You're bringing your own ideas, your own attitudes, your own opinions, your own values, your own previous experience, and therefore every individual interprets every situation quite differently. And that's another trouble with modeling or with reinforcement, positive and negative, you know, with vicarious reinforcement. Right? You have to be careful how that works. So, on the other hand, the reason that I have the question marks, this is just my opinion on one or two other people, is that you say, well, I have the question mark, you say, well, that may be true, but meanwhile, everything you have, you learn from every attitude, every desire, everything you learn from the environment. So, but it's clearly more active. You see why it's active? Because you're bringing yourself. You're interpreting the environment and making it sense out of it for you. The question marks actually I should probably take off because they're for doctoral students. Okay, let's go here again. What's the relationship between learning and development? Once again, we develop by learning. Learning explains development. We are what we have learned. The attitudes, the ideas, that's why I'm not so sure how active we are. The attitudes, not just the behaviors, but the attitudes that I bring, the ideas I bring, okay? They've all been learned. Social learning. So you're the sum total of what you've learned. Now it's not just behaviors, now it's ideas, it's emotions, it's self-evaluations, it's evaluations of others, but it's the sum of what you've learned. 3, how do people change? Once again, we're down to reinforcement and punishment, so this time they're both direct, the way Skinner's getting indirect, but there's also modeling. That's an interesting thing that he brought, that we can learn things, and of course learning is not behaving. So people who have never swung a golf club, tell me your name again. Elias. Push it down, say it.
Elias.
Elias?
Yes.
So Elias, who has never swung a golf club, because he talks about mental, he has a mental picture of what it's like. So he could get up and more or less learn, even though he has no interest in golf. Is that fair to say, Elias?
I like golf.
I like golf?
She was the one who came over there.
Oh, you were the one. Who was it?
Jennifer.
Jennifer, I remember already said, I don't care about golf. I'll never care about golf. Every night I go to bed praying that my husband will hate golf. And that'll make my life better, right? Well, all of a sudden take an instant dislike, right? Okay, but she learned it because she kept it in her head, right? Kept it in her head, and it's there. It's a picture, so she can do it. And that's interesting, because if tomorrow somebody says to Jennifer, you know, I've watched your not so good swing, and I think with the proper training, you could probably make $60, $70 million a year on the golf tour. Her interest might perk up a little, right? Yeah, she's right. Okay, So this idea of modeling, of learning without reinforcements, is a very interesting addition. Okay, let's go here. We're still here. What motivates people? Once again, he's very big on reinforcements and punishments, and motivation for him is much motivation is external. He even wrote a book called Behavioral Modification, although it was well before he developed this final model of learning. But also, our internal thoughts motivate us. Okay? I can do it. I'm good at this. Right? People who have a very high self-efficacy about their English ability, even though they may know that their English is not as good as George's, may say, if I stick to this, I can get it. George couldn't get it the first crack, but I can get it. I'm really good at this stuff. Just circumstances may be behind George, but I can get it. So we're also motivated by our internal thoughts, our internal self-evaluations. Okay? How important is behavior? It's very important. This is still a theory that is to a large extent trying to look on what motivates and brings about behaviors or lack of behaviors. Bandura emphasizes modifying behavior, modeling behavior, and evaluating students in terms of identifiable behaviors. His Bobo doll experiments were not, what do I do about getting kids to change their opinion of violence, but what do I do to modify violent behavior, to increase it or reduce it. It's still quite behavioral. And I cannot emphasize enough to you, even though people may not talk the behavioral talk, they walk the behavioral walk. These are the specific behaviors that we want to see to show the kid has achieved. Anybody who's taught has heard that. Yeah, go ahead.
Skinner was
oh, you got it down. Good for you.
Skinner was the Bobo doll person, right?
No, Bandura.
Bandura?
Yeah, Bandura was the Bobo doll person. Because he's talking about modeling other people's violent behavior. Okay? It's modeling. And so, again, it's modeling behaviors. I can't model other people's thoughts. I don't know what you're thinking. So it's very behavioral. And I've got to tell you, my professor told me, I told you, there are only two things you have to know to teach in a university. Read a chapter ahead of the students, admit your prejudices up front. I'm not so sure about behaviors. To me, the key might be the emotions, and we already talked about stealing the bases. There are a lot of different ways to demonstrate abilities. There are kinds of things, you can do this stuff, but you don't really understand it. Or you think you understand it, but you don't quite get it right. How many people have been able to pass courses where you knew, I didn't know what the heck's going on? All of us. So, you have to wonder about behaviors. All right, how important is thinking? However, let's go back to the PowerPoint. For Bandura, thinking is also very important. Thoughts influence behavior, memories and emotions that are the result of past experiences are a crucial component of the behaviors a person displays in a given situation. Okay, so thinking and emotions, thinking, I should have said thinking and emotions, but what goes on in your head, in quotes, is very important to him. Okay, and in many ways, when we begin to study more classic developmental theories that clearly are talking about development stages, you'll see he's pretty close in many ways. And of course, for him also, how important are emotions and attitudes? Bandura puts a great deal of emphasis upon emotions. This is most clearly seen in the importance he places on self-efficacy as a fundamental determinant of learning. Okay? Okay, and for other social learning theorists, this is even more true. Learned helplessness and locus of control. Okay, this learned helplessness and locus of control, come back to me now if you can. I want to spend the rest of the time talking about some other social learning theorists, or people I consider to be social learning theorists, who are not Bandura, or concepts from them. One of these concepts is called learned helplessness. And once again, this is perhaps the most, it's not a term that Bandura came up with, although it fits neatly into his theory, but this is a very potent thing about, this is sort of self-efficacy to the extreme. They did an experiment with dogs, okay? I don't know if you could do these experiments these days, but in those days it was before, right? The dog is put in a cage, and the floor of the cage is an electric grid, excuse me. And in the cage is a bar that if the bar is pushed, the electricity on the floor will go off. You turn on electricity, it's not enough to kill the dog, but it's uncomfortable. It's not torture, but it's uncomfortable, right? Dog runs around the cage, and by accident hits the bar. Electricity goes off. Turn it on again, the dog runs around, accident hits the bar, electricity goes off. Before you know it, electricity goes on, bang, the dog runs and hits the bar. Bang, the dog runs and hits the bar. And usually, by the way, the dog tends to hit the bar with the same part of its body that it did so by accident. So if the dog by accident hits the bar with its side, the dog will run up to the bar and back in. If the dog does it with its nose, it'll come up and hit it with its nose, right? So let's say we have a dog that's hitting it with its nose all the time. Then you turn on electricity, the dog hits it with the nose, it goes off, it does it instantly. Then you turn off the electrical connection between the bar that the dog is hitting and the floor of the cage. So the dog hits the bar and the electricity doesn't go off. The dog hits the bar, electricity doesn't go off. Eventually the dog, even though the dog could do it before, learns that I cannot do this. It's hopeless. My efforts make no difference. And there are even some cases where the dog, rather than just standing on the floor, will lie down on the floor of the cage. So the electricity is running through its whole body, gives up. And if you do that enough, the dog learns, the dog will not. You can take the dog, you can turn the bar back on, take the dog and take it and push it into the bar, push its nose into the bar. Electricity goes off. You've reconnected it. Pushes its nose into the bar, the electricity goes off. Pushes its nose, you do it 1,000 times, 100 times, not 1,000. You do it over and over and over. Electricity goes on, the dog lies on the cage, the floor of the cage. It's learned, my efforts make no difference. Sound familiar, teachers? Learning disabled? I can't do it. Attention deficit disorder, I'm not even trying. I can't do it. That's learned helplessness. Okay? And this was noted by Bandura, by other social. I can't remember the person who did these experiments, but it doesn't matter. Long time ago. So the idea that the attitudes that you learn in the environment are the key to the behaviors that you then express. And there are several of these kinds of things. The work about cognitive styles, right, or learning styles, not all of it, but much of it comes from social learning theorists. Okay, let's go back to PowerPoint for 1 second. I want to talk about one called locus of control, internal, external locus of control. Let's go to the overhead. This was an idea first proposed by a person named Rotter. I can't remember his first name. Rotter, who talked about locus of control and internal and external locus of control. Okay, come back to me. And Rotter said, I'm just writing here while I'm, what happens is that people, the question that they ask, okay, the question that people ask is, when something happens to you, is it mostly internal or is it mostly external? Okay? So for instance, and he thought it was a global personality type, and stuff you learn. Later people said there's internal and external in different areas. So for instance, there'll be somebody who will say, I have an internal, a person who has an internal locus of control, let's say for academics, will say, if I study, if I put in the time, if I put in the effort, I'll be able to do well in the course. Right? A person with an external locus of control will say, doesn't make any difference, no matter what I do. Doesn't make any difference. It either, and let's go back over to the tablet again. External locus of control, there are two kinds of external. It's either dumb luck or powerful others. Dumb luck is, if I do well on a test, it's just dumb luck. I lucked into it. Or the teacher liked me, so she gave me a high grade. Okay? so I'll give you my, and so, come back to me. So success is chalked up, and of course it makes a big difference. And social learning theory, Rodder would say, this is what you have learned. If you try to do something and you succeed, you get an internal locus of control. If there's something you say, well, if I try, my efforts lead to it. If you try to do something you constantly fail, you say, I can't do it. And so even when you have successes, I will tell you my class of external locus of control story. I went to camp on Seneca Lake. You guys been to Seneca Lake? New York State is such a beautiful state. So beautiful. The Finger Lakes, they're gorgeous. Deep, narrow lakes with vegetation all around them, dug by the glaciers. They look like fingers on the map. That's what they call the Finger Lakes. Gorgeous. If you say New York, everybody thinks of that slum at the bottom there with all the concrete in the building in New York City. Beautiful. Route 17 is gorgeous, the southern tier of the states. Anyway, so and there were a whole bunch of camps on Seneca Lake. So we used to play the other camps. Every once in a while, we had baseball teams, and we play the other camps, right? So as I told you, I didn't have too much of a good opinion about myself as an athlete when I was a kid. So I don't remember how old I was. And so got all the teams done. They're all the people in my age group. We have all the positions except right field, right? That's the. So he's got 3 or 4 of us. He said, all right, you guys try for right field. So Lieberman, get out there. So I got out there. And what happened is that there was a woods out in right field. Went into the woods, was on a automatic home run unless somebody went to caught it there, right? So he goes and he hits a ball. He hit it too hard. I want to see if I could catch a fly. So I'm standing up. Ready? Here I go. So I'm there, and he hits the ball. And I lost. I couldn't see it. I was a horrible outfield. I didn't know. I go for the ball, and it's in back of me. I'd back up and drop in front of me. So I go like this with my arm up in the air, and I'm 2 steps into the woods, and I hear plop. The ball hit my glove. I couldn't believe. I didn't even see it. I swear to you, I didn't even see it. I just hear this plop. I said, okay, Lieberman, you're the right fielder. Right? And I could tell he thought maybe I was better than he thought I was. At the last minute of the game, when the game came with the next game, the center field, I got poison ivy. And he put me in center field. I was shaking the whole game, right? I didn't know what I was doing. So, to me, that was just dumb luck. And I never said to myself, you know what? Maybe if you practice, you'll be a better player. Because it never occurred to me. I was just loud, you know. I just couldn't feel. I was no, you know, that was no good, especially. So, I was in the infield. It was okay. I'd throw my body on top of the ball. I didn't care, especially softball. Who cared right there? But there were guys who could really field, right? So that was, you know, they didn't want to put me in there. So it never occurred to me because I thought it was dumb luck. And I've worked with a lot of kids who've had problems in school, and it is the hardest thing to overcome. I work with a kid. I remember one kid brought me home in '86. 7th grade. Said, it was just lucky the questions the teachers picked. Okay. And this is learned from effort. So when kids have them, right, and interestingly enough, okay, well, let me tell you 2 things. The first thing is, you can have difference. For instance, you can have locus of control for success or failure. The people who try the hardest, who seem to be the best off, they have an internal locus of control for success and an external one for failure. If I got a good one, I did it. If it's bad, something screwed me up. I'm really good at this. I remember I was tutoring one kid. He was having a hard time in math. I was tutoring him in math. I'm a good math tutor because I remember the problems, okay? So, but I told her I was in English. He said, well, help him in English, will you? I said, okay. He was really a good student in English. So he goes and he's trying this, and I would help him. When he'd have a test, I'd help him a little in English. So we're working on English. I said, you got to study this stuff. I know you got to study, right? I said, I'm going to get 100, right? So he's studying, and he's this and that. No, I'm fine. I'm not going to study. He gets an 85, which for him was crushing. I said, see, I told you had to study. He said, no. She said, I can say this because it was a quote. He said, nah, that bitch is out to get me. I said, what are you talking about? See, powerful other. Wasn't me. I know this stuff. I said, maybe you should try, but a little bit. He said, See, when he failed, no. He was great. But then later he said to me, you know what? maybe I should try a little harder. Maybe I don't know it all. Maybe I should just study a little bit, because he knew he was great, and the next time he got a 97 or 99, whatever it was. But for him, he knew that if he made the effort, he could do it. And when he failed, it wasn't because he couldn't do it. Kids who won't try, it's because they have a tremendous external locus of control. They can't do it. I have a very external locus of control for athletics. 5, 6, it's just dumb luck. Except in racquetball, there it's just being sneaky, because I haven't played in years, but I got these horribly annoying. Anyone play racquetball? You ever play with people who have this horribly annoying serve? It plops in the corner and you can't get it out. They can't play on it. I was one of those guys. So I could get a few points from my annoying serve. But if I made a good shot that just went off the front wall and then dribbled on the ground, that was just luck as far as I'm concerned. I wouldn't even practice those shots because I didn't know how to do it. That's the key here. People have to have an internal locus of control. Okay, and in general, there's this idea of you learn attitudes from your environment, and in turn the environment, and they will tell you, these people tell you, once you have this attitude, it becomes a part of your personality, and it's very hard to undo. It's hard to undo it. So the job of the teacher is to be sure that you give kids stuff that's doable. Now, there's been a lot of research. In other words, let me put it this way. If you succeed, okay, I'm going to the next program, okay, it's the key to developing a high self-efficacy, the key to developing a high internal locus of control, I can do with my efforts, is feeling that you have real accomplishments. And that's not as easy as you might think. We're going to go to another theory, now Vygotsky's theory, to show you what I'm talking about here. Okay? There's one theory that actually talked about this in different terms called achievement motivation. People with a high achievement motivation, people with a low achievement motivation. People had a real motivation to achieve a lot. Okay? I'm looking for the garbage can here. Or people, is a garbage can back there? Where's the garbage can? Bring it over here. Thanks. Or people who don't have a high motivation to achieve. And this achievement motivation is a different theory, but it fits nicely, so I'm going to show it to you. Okay, here's a garbage can. See it? Now, what I want to do is I have this pen, okay? And the question is, if I stand here, this is the farthest away I can stand. Can you see the garbage can still? And get the pen into the bucket every time. If I have a high achievement motivation, a high need to succeed, okay, and you say to me, okay, you can stand wherever you want and throw in, to try to throw the pen in. Man, they're going to kill me if I throw this pen. And throw the pen into, I won't throw it, I promise. Yeah. And throw this pen, here we go. Thank you. And throw this pen in, okay? Okay, this is where I can get it in every time, see? Whoops, I guess not. This is where I can get it in every time. There, I got it in. I've done it 12 times in a row. Lost a pen. Okay? Ooh, there's garbage in there. No, it's just a bottle in there. Okay, so if this is the place I can stand, and I have a high achievement motivation, you say, stand wherever you want. Where would I stand? Who would say, what? What? If I stand closer, I can sure get it in. But I want to achieve something. I have high achievement motivation. Where would I stand?
On the other side of that door.
No, because then I for sure know I can't get it in. I'd take a step back and practice from here. Take a step. It's a doable task. Where do people with a low achievement motivation stand? We already had the answers. Say it. Right here. So nobody can criticize me. I'm never going to fail. Or, Sam?
Might as well be on the other side of
Yeah.
the door because you're never going to see.
Right, I'm going to stand over here. Right? Keep going. Can you get me? Am I in the picture? I'm going to stand, where am I? There I am. Over here. Actually, I'll stand way back there and give it to where nobody can do it. So nobody can say anything to me about it. Right? So if I miss, well, who could expect it? If I get it, woo! Right? And you, by the way, you will notice that, thank you, I'm telling you, the pen's in good shape. You don't want it back? Yeah, I'll take it. What the heck? You will notice that people who are very, I worked with a lot of people, had a lot of trouble achieving. If you would ask them to do something, what do you want to be? Oh, I don't know. One would tell me, I don't know, I think I'll be a girl. I don't know, I can't do anything. You give them a problem to do, say, or these are kids having real troubles, high school. I'm working with them on their GEDs. They finally just got by and they're going to go to try to get to community college. Remember, one said, I don't even know if I can pass there. I guess maybe I'll just be, the janitor. Another one said a neurosurgeon. Right? The first one is saying, I don't think I can do much of anything anyway. I'm going to set myself a goal that I know is achievable. It wasn't a janitor, it was something else. I can't remember. But it was something like that, something he could already do. Oh, I think he wanted to work in a car changing thing, where they change the oil, right? They change the oil, those car changing, where they change the oil, because he already knew how to do that. His father had shown him, right? And the other one, a neurosurgeon. Well, if you fail being a neurosurgeon, nobody can blame you. Almost nobody can do that. Now this, okay, this goes the other way around too. If you want people to get an internal locus of control, something, and this is not easy, I can say it, it's easy to say. I'm a real champ when it comes to just saying things. But if you want people to get a real internal locus of control, okay, then what you have to do is give them an achievable task. One of the worst things that we do is we take the kids. Has anybody ever taught middle school kids who are having troubles? Go ahead, Allison, right? Go ahead, Allison, tell us about it. What do you teach?
I teach 8th grade English.
Okay. So do you have to give them reading books well below their level?
We do an assessment at the beginning of the school year where it takes days, and they have to retell stories to me to figure out where they are.
Do you ever have kids tell you, this is baby stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot? See, what they're saying is, you're going, yeah. What does baby stuff mean? It means, even if I can get this, it's not an achievement. I'm in 8th grade, and this is 3rd grade stuff. It's not a real achievement. Doesn't count. That's what they're telling her. You take kids who are having trouble in math and you give them there in the 6th grade. 1 and 2, almost 1 and 2, 3. 4 take away 2. 1 times 1. 5 divided by 5. Oh, 100, see how good you are? That's like standing right on top of the basket and throwing it in. That's no achievement. Or if you give them stuff that makes them stand over there, that's no achievement either. They know, I can't do it. Do you ever get them throwing out wild answers, hoping and praying? The stuff they can't do? Allison, push it down. Yeah.
Yeah, they come up with all kinds of answers for
all
everything.
Kinds of stuff. Because if I hit one that's right, woo! But, okay. Now, another person, let's go back to the PowerPoint, that I want to talk about in this respect is Lev Vygotsky. Sometimes I do Vygotsky with Piaget, because some people say he's developmental psychologist, but we're going to do him here with Bandura. And I think he's a social learning theorist. Not everybody agrees with me. Vygotsky was a Soviet psychologist who... Come back to me for a second. First, I have to tell you something. My mother was a refugee from the Soviet Union. So I don't like that government. I'm glad it's gone. But to put it mildly, okay? But at the beginning, it turned into a brutal, terrible tyranny. People will tell you, oh, the Soviet Union, Lenin had it right. Just Stalin ruined it all. Baloney. Stalin had his police force called the Cheka. They'd go out and kill all the opponents of the revolution. Trotsky went out and he just devastated the Soviet Union. The idea is not a good one. But in any case, at the beginning, there were a lot of people who really were idealistic about this, especially people from ethnic minorities who were persecuted in the Soviet Union. Vygotsky happened to be Jewish, and there was a lot of persecution of Jews in the Soviet Union. He couldn't even go to college. He was because they wouldn't allow Jews, and this was their quality and all this kind of stuff. And he died very, very young from pneumonia. Somebody once said, gee, he was such a bright guy. Well, I wonder what would have happened to him if he had lived. So you don't have to wonder. I said, Stalin would have murdered him. Right? So you didn't have to wonder about, he was sort of just before they began repressing all kinds of independent study. Then he died very young. So it was the early years of the Soviet Union. He was a very idealistic guy, but the idea of if you can have a perfecting society, right, a social order will make a wonderful human being. And Vygotsky's stuff was written in Russian. And then for years, nobody got it because it was sort of suppressed. And then in the 1970s, when the Soviet Union began to loosen up a little, his stuff came out, it was translated and became big, Thought and Language. How many people have heard the term, the zone of proximal development? Have you heard that? Yeah, that's from Vygotsky, and that was big. The truth is, it looks like, a lot of it's going to look like a rehash of Bandura, except he predated Bandura by a long time. So let's look a little by Vygotsky's theory. We're going to look at, this idea of giving people a challenge, he actually came with his own. This idea of this zone of proximal development. So here, let's go to the PowerPoint. There's Vygotsky. There's a picture of him. Okay, and he started his studies out in language. And there's a very complex thing about the relationship of thought and language, which makes him to some extent a developmental psychologist, but it's not for this level. Okay, for Vygotsky, learning language facilitated development. It allowed children to receive ideas, culture, and thinking from those around him. Now, we're going to see when we get to Piaget, he's going to say that's baloney. Language reflects your underlying thinking. But Vygotsky said, no. Thinking, in other words, language reflects your thinking. He said, no, thinking can reflect language. If you learn language, it can help you think. It can help you receive ideas and culture and thinking from those around you. Now, you can see how communitarian it's going to be, because that was the original idea. The people who the original idealistic socialism that Vygotsky thought he was buying into, he died right near the beginning of the Bolshevik Revolution, the Soviet Revolution, Bolshevik Revolution, and he died before it was clear how brutal and oppressive the regime really was. Okay? Vygotsky believed that learning language could enhance thinking, and that thinking reflects language. So in the end, what he's going to do is try to set up social situations that can enhance your language, enhance your ability to express yourself, enhance your ideas in general, and that will make your thinking better. Okay, and as I said, Piaget believed that language reflects thinking. We'll get to Piaget. Okay, I just want to say the other. Piaget is going to say your underlying cognitive processes, as they develop, they enable you to have richer and richer and more sophisticated language, not the other way around. So Vygotsky is going to tell you that what you're going to have is a social situation that's going to reflect language and other skills, and he came up with the ideas of zone of proximal development. That's the level of achievement. That's the level of achievement that includes tasks that the child cannot accomplish alone, but can accomplish with the help of others. Okay? Either by a competent adult or by a peer. In other words, again, it's social learning. So it's something you cannot, so here, okay, let's go to the tablet. This is the zone of proximal development right here. This is the zone. Stuff down here you can already do yourself. There's no point, here, let me make the zone a little smaller here. This is your zone right here. Okay? I'll show you why. Stuff down here you can already do yourself. There's no point in teaching that. That's no achievement. See what I'm saying? How it goes into stuff up here you can't possibly do because you don't know it. So what you've got to do is get something in here that with the help of teachers or peers you can do. Once you learn that, the zone's going to go up a little, because now that you've learned that, right? This is your new zone. Now, what you couldn't do before, you can do by yourself, and now, because you've learned this, there's something higher you can do. Right? So you're going to see that Vygotsky is going to be very hot on teachers helping and on peer-assisted instruction, working in groups with peers. Okay, come back to me. Oh, that's nice. Okay, okay, come back to me. So Vygotsky, and people will tell you, oh, Vygotsky was very much for cooperative learning and kids working together and showing that, and Piaget didn't care about it. That is absolutely not true. When we get to Piaget, we'll see it. Okay? So, here, let's go back to the PowerPoint, I'm sorry. So tasks below the zone, as I said, are things that kids can already accomplish with no help. And so giving this kid a kind of task involves no new learning. There's just, the no is off the screen, but you can see it. There's just no point. And tasks above the zone can't be accomplished even with help. So giving this kind of task causes frustration and failure, results in no meaningful learning, and ultimately results in an external locus of control, learned helplessness, a low sense of self-efficacy, all the stuff the other social learning theorists talk about. Okay? It sounds very similar, but except that he predates all of them. Unfortunately, his work wasn't available in the West until after a lot of them were working on their stuff. Okay? So what you've got to do, therefore, oh, that's a nice effect. Therefore, the job of the teacher, or the therapist, or the administrator for that matter, trying to get a person to cope with a problem the person's already controlling is a waste of time. Trying to get the person to cope with a problem that is just so hopeless is also a waste of time. You've got to sort of move up, says Vygotsky, is to provide activities within the child's zone of proximal development. I'll show you how you do this. Okay? Come over here. I'm going to show you how you do it. David, right? Oscar. Who's David? That's David. Oscar, ready? Here's what you do. Oscar, turn here. In order to get the person's zone of proximal development, hold out your hand. You pull the person's pinky, pull on his ear, and then push his head forward. And bang! It pops up right here. There it is. Right? Thank you very much. I see your zone. It's a pretty good one. Okay? Oscar, sorry. I knew they got it. Okay? It's easy to say, but it's not so easy to do. And you'll give a kid a task you're sure the kid can do, and he can't. You'll help. You'll get a peer to help. Can't. Oh, they'll do it in groups. Kid can't. Or the other way around. You give a kid a test. Oh, this is the next thing. The kid can do it already. And then the kid gets insulted. Oh, the teacher thinks I'm stupid. Or this is baby stuff. She thinks I'm stupid. Right, Allison? Yeah. I've seen a boy of the adolescence. And the interesting thing is, I saw one kid who hated his teacher's guts because she treats me as a baby. I happen to know her. I didn't tell him that. What a committed, dedicated person she was. She was trying so hard, right? She was trying to convince him, but nope. And if you could do just one thing she gave him, said, I told you. So, okay, the question becomes then, here, let's go, thanks. How is the question of what Vygotsky calls scaffolding? Right, building. What are the ways that you build it? You can get kids to move up in the zone. Stuff in the zone. How do you get kids? How do you get that? How do you get them to learn the new stuff? Okay, and scaffolding basically means students receive help that enables them to complete tasks they cannot complete independently until they can complete them independently. Okay, so scaffolding is provided by knowledgeable others. This could be the teacher, other students in the classroom. Vygotsky would be a big proponent of cooperative learning. Indeed, in the early days of the Soviet Union, there was a guy who wrote a book. Actually, I did my master's minor on this guy, and I can't remember his name, but he was a great Soviet, and he wrote a whole bunch of books about Soviet children as cooperative. You know what I'm talking about? You know his name? Probably not. Okay, we got somebody here who grew up in the Soviet Union. What? Say it again. Yeah, I think that's it. Say it again with an American accent. Go ahead. Push it down.
Makarenko?
I think so. Makarenko, I think so. I'm not sure.
He was,
push it down.
He did experiment with orphans. And he taught them groups.
Right, that's it. Right. And there was even, I'm not sure if he's the one they talked about the perfect socialist society with people in groups. And the idea was, but if you read this, I mean, the stuff wasn't for me. But if you read this stuff, the idea was always that people are helping each other learn what you can't do. And then, of course, come back to me for a second. That is the idea behind learning, right? Who was good in math? Tell me your name again.
Marshall.
I knew there was a Mar in there somewhere. Marshall. So Marshall and George will be in this group where they're working on a project about, I don't know, boats or I don't know. So he'll help her write the report, and she'll help him understand the mathematics of the ratios of what do you call those? Rudders and all that stuff. And she'll get better things. That's the idea. They'll scaffold for one another. Okay, they'll pull each other up. And even obviously, as you may well imagine, in the United States, people are not particularly interested in Vygotsky's love of the theoretical socialist system, but there was an idea of we could help each other and peers can do things, and he was big on that. Okay, now let's go back to the PowerPoint, look at types of scaffolding. It's going to sound very familiar. One is modeling. Sound familiar? But he talked about modeling a long time before Bandura did. You can show people things. Another one is thinking aloud. Come back to me for a second. There's also a concept, not in these theories, of self-modeling. If you're good with language, who's pretty good with language in math and in I'm so bad at it I can't even remember it. Like spatial stuff, who's that way? Somebody once told me when you're I'm bad at it. And she said to me, she was a therapist, and she said to me, she was one of our doctoral students at the time, she was a therapist, she said, when you do this stuff, think out loud, talk through it, because that's what you're going, and I'll be damned if I didn't get better at it. My score on a test went up. So it's an interesting kind of an approach. But see, I'm doing this, and then if I can't get this, I go here and do this. And you're watching the other people think aloud. Interestingly enough, this is one of the reasons why some people call Vygotsky more of a developmental psychologist than a social learning theorist, because for him, thoughts and exposing others to your thoughts is very important. It's a way to scaffold, get people to see things. And you see, by thinking aloud, you're giving them your language, and able to incorporate their language into their thinking, and that will help their thinking. Okay? Another one here, let's go back to here, is asking questions. This is not a question. What's the answer to question number 7? That's not what he's talking about. What he's talking about, I think, are a couple kinds of questions. Number 1 is asking questions to see what the person doesn't understand. But number 2, you can ask questions such as the person will say, I see. I remember the greatest one I had about questions. I said, it's a question. I said, what do you put down here? I said, what do you put down here? I'm tutoring a kid who had terrible troubles in math. He says to me, this was in high school, right? He was a senior. He said, I don't know the answer. I said, yes, you do. He said, I don't know the answer. He said, I could tell he wanted to punch me, right? He said, yeah. I said, yes, you do. He said, I have absolutely no idea what the answer is. I said, so what do you put down in math when you have absolutely no idea? God, this lightness, I said. He said, oh, X. He finally figured out what X was. So by asking him the right question, I got him to come to the answer. What do you mean? How would you do this? If there's no thing and there's no thing here, you know, the famous, I once got a kid to solve the problem. You know, the guy's on one side of the bank, right? Here's a zookeeper. He's got a lion. Don't you know this one? He has a lion, a sheep, and a bale of hay, right? And he's taking them all back to the zoo, and as long as he's there, the lion won't eat, because the lion won't eat the sheep, and the sheep won't eat the hay, right? But if he goes away, the lion will eat, and leaves the lion and the sheep alone, the lion will eat the sheep, or if he leaves the sheep and the hay alone, the sheep will eat the hay. How can he get them all back to the zoo? And he comes to a place, and he's got a boat, and there's only room for him and one of the other ones in there. How does he get the 3 of them across the lake, right? Obviously, the first thing you do is take the sheep across, because the lion won't eat the hay. But if you come back for one of the other ones, you take the line across, and that's the way you're going back for the hay. So, and I had something I say, well, remember, you can't leave them alone. What should you do? You want to know the answer, right? First, you take the sheep across. Okay. Then you go back and you get the hay. Then you take the hay across. Then you take the sheep back. Right? Then you take the line across. Line in the hay, and then you go back and get the sheep taken across. So the sheep was first. And I had a kid, right? Pretty good, huh? Yeah. Gee, I'm smart after somebody told me the answer, right? So I had a kid, I gave it to him, and by asking her the right questions, right, I said, now remember, I said, well, what are you going to do? You can't leave him alone. She said, oh, I could take him. You get it. So that's a good way to do it. Actually, Socrates once, in order to prove that everybody knew everything, actually had a slave boy. I can't remember the name of what was one of Plato's dialogue. Can't remember the name of the dialogue. A slave boy proved the Pythagorean theorem by just asking him the right questions. I don't know about that, but you get the point. And another one, let's go back here, is cueing, mnemonic devices, right? You know that word mnemonic? M-N. A mnemonic is something that helps you remember. It's the only word in English that starts with M-N. And the M is silent, a mnemonic device, cueing. Giving the person a hint about what to do. Okay? Like I don't remember how to spell receive. Is it E-I or I-E? You say I before E. The person goes, oh, except after C. How many people remember going I before E except after C and when sound is in there and he had no idea what it was good for in spelling, right? Remember that? Blah, 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 blah. That's the trouble. It's, you know, the thinking. But cues, remembering. We'll go into that much more when we come to information processing. I guess that's next time. Okay, does this sound familiar? Much of this is what Bandura would tell you to do, and actually I used to do this with Vygotsky. Between information processing and Bandura, there's not too much new here. Okay, it's really, you'll notice that I have the theories about how do people change, etc. It's not really much different from, come back to me, it's not really much, it really is a social learning theory. Okay? Okay, but, okay, let's go back here. So, for him, the goals of education are finding something within the zone of proximal development and finding scaffolding techniques that will get the kid to learn it. Okay? And here, let's come back to me. Forget this now. Okay? And what happens, according to him, is that if kids don't achieve, right, according to, let's go back. According to social learning theorists, again, if kids don't achieve, the onus for it goes on to the teacher. The onus is on the teacher. Okay? Because what they are saying, but the onus is on the teacher directly. You're responsible for finding something within the zone of proximal development. You are responsible for having, if the kid has a low self-efficacy, it's something that you or other teachers did to him or her. If the person, and by the way, that's true in general in society, okay? Anybody here want to be a therapist? Do we have any of those? I keep talking about that, right? When therapists come, much of what they do can be framed in these terms. People having low self-esteem, low prestige, depression. Depression is often called anger turned on oneself. Depressed people have a very low self-esteem. I can't, life is hopeless. I can't do anything. I'm in a hopeless situation, right? Okay, much comes, and that comes from society, they'll say. If kids don't learn, it's something you did wrong. You set the wrong goal, just the way Skinner said. You've got to find, and once again, you see it stated very clearly, but most clearly by Vygotsky. As I said, I don't think Vygotsky really gives us too much that Skinner and Skinner probably didn't say before, but this zone of proximal development, which you hear everywhere, he's really telling us, look, it's your responsibility to find out what the kid can learn. And that in turn, say the other social learning theorists, gives the kid a sense of self-efficacy, high sense of self-efficacy, avoids learned helplessness, etc., etc. Okay? And there are many people, we're going to see a lot of people who are going to tell you, okay, that many of the problems that kids have, it's a therapist's job to fix up, not the teacher's job, because the teacher, they've got screwed up, I can't do it, I can't help, but it's also the teacher's job. But I got screwed up, I can't do it, I don't know what's going on, I can't do that, this is hopeless, I suck at that. I must have heard that 10,000 times from adolescents. I suck at this stuff, I can't do it. And you can see it, and then there's a turning away. Did I tell you about the kid inventing the game, the phonics game with a kid? Did I tell you about that? I was tutoring one little boy. He had been 2 years in phonics. I don't know why they couldn't figure out phonics was good. And it came to the point where he hadn't learned any phonics. So I said, okay, no phonics. Took the computer, we sat down. We're just doing whole word recognition, whole word recognition. Then one day, and we're reading from this list of whole, one day I see him going banana, right? Tree. Flew. Just here and there. I said, he knows phonics. He couldn't do it when it was put in front of him, not because there was something wrong with him, but because the whole first year of learning phonics, he had learned he couldn't do it. I'm not going to do it. So me, hey, I got a doctorate in education. This is an 8-year-old kid. Watch this. So I said, today we're just going to play a game. And the game was here, and this game was that one. It was mostly whole word stuff and fun stuff and this, that. And I put in a little bit of phonics stuff. I had disguised it so cleverly that Einstein wouldn't find it. Believe me. It was so good. It was just like a little fun, this. I mean, it was just, and it was in between fun. I mean, you couldn't spot it, especially if you were 8 years old. So we're playing the game, 5 minutes into the game. There's one little thing like that. He goes, I hate that stuff, I'm not doing it. He's just like that. And I put in something, I knew that he could actually put in something that I had seen him do before. A word that I had seen him, quote unquote, sound out. But he had the sense of learned helplessness. I'm not doing it. Okay? And to my mind, this is one of the great contributions of social. These are kind of the two contributions of social learning theory. And all this is a conglomeration of theories. Number one, teach stuff. If you're going to teach something, and by the way, that's true of Skinner too, teach something the kid doesn't know, but at the kid's level. That's why Skinner says, get the entering behavior, and then go to the next step. Unfortunately for Bandura, he spends a lot of time reinforcing stuff the kid already knows so that other kids will learn it. And but it happens anyway. Kids learn from other kids. Find something that's doable. In turn, be sure that has two things. Number one, you're teaching something, and number two, that is the way to get the best attitudes and emotions from the child. You understand what I'm saying here? That is the way to get the person to feel, I can do it. I have an internal locus of control, and I can do it. Okay? Interesting enough, something else that comes out of cooperative learning and of scaffolding, there's another suggestion here that if you can link up something, we'll see this much stronger in information processing, but if you can link up something, right? In other words, I really had a thing about music. I was convinced I was just terrible in music, right? Of course, I have a son who just won an Emmy Award in music. I told you all that. It is a new news. I don't give a damn if it's on the tape 60 times, right? I don't care if the tape runs 60 years, right? That's going to be, okay? And then one day somebody showed me that music is just a matter of, it's mathematical. And this was math I knew, right? By this time I was an adult. He said, in order to get a scale, it's just C, D, F, G, C, D. It's the chords for a given scale are 1, 4, 5 to the 7ths. So you go C, D, E, F, G. So this key of G is C, F, and G 7th. Okay? Then he said, get an auto harp. Because sometimes it's like the key of F is F, G, A, B, C to the 7th, but it's not B, it's B flat. No, I don't know, you can't do it with math, right? But it doesn't matter, because in the auto harp they'll have a B flat. He said, get an auto harp, and he said, just, play some. There's no, let's transpose it to another key, right? And pretty soon I was playing that auto harp. I couldn't pick out a tune, but I could play that auto harp, and I was singing along, and, I've been making a terrible mistake. I've just been singing in class. I've got to bring my auto harp from now on. You'll be happy to know that it's broken. Okay, so, but it's, right? So by linking it up to something I knew, I said, that's a scaffolding technique too. To link up something you knew. Suddenly, my sense of self-efficacy was higher. Oh, it's not, just music, which is hopeless to me. It's math. I can handle that in math. I mean, I just have to count, right? And he said, play a little while, piddle, and eventually sing, and I could carry a tune, whatever that means. And he said, you'll see this. And eventually I got to the point where I could sort of figure out songs, etc., etc. So that can help too, right? If you, right? So if you have a kid who's good in music and lousy in math, I had one little girl like that. So music is all mathematical, that kind of stuff, right? I had one of the ways that I really got better in math was in college, is I liked logic. And one of my professors showed me, look, mathematics, it was the logic professor, not the math professor. He said, it's got the same built-in kind of a logical system to it. Treat it like a logical problem. Well, it helped me a lot. So, I mean, I had done well. I took advanced algebra in high school. I passed it. It was okay, but it was all sort of muddled. You know what I'm saying? I passed, I did okay, but it was also this, I passed about, I'm not sure I really know what's going on kind of thing, right? And it helped me see what was going on. So these are important things. And finally, we're going to end early today, I can't believe it. And finally, so the thing that happens here is we're finally getting some kind of a balance between cognition and behavior. But we're still in the point of demonstrable behaviors and worrying about cognitions that won't let us see demonstrable. I'm not going to try because I don't like to do it. But at least we're starting. And once again, please notice that there is a ferocious opposition to having every kid do the same thing at the same point, taking the same standardized test in the same way. There is a tremendous opposition to, if you have a group, to assuming everyone in the group is functioning the same. When you have kids at different levels, the purpose is to have kids working together so that they can pull each other up. That's where the word scaffolding comes from. I don't know. It's a translation from some Russian word. I know so it must be the best one they can get. I don't know what it is. I'll find out afterwards from the person in the class who knows Russian. He'll tell me what it is. Okay. So we get this idea once again that you cannot expect every kid to start at the same point, and even more so what you're telling people is if you don't work with kids where they are, you get enormous numbers of negative emotional consequences. You get learned helplessness, you get low sense of self-efficacy, you get an external locus of control. If I can try and try and try and it doesn't make any difference. There was one very interesting show. I have to admit something to you. I didn't like Bill Cosby's show. The show he was famous for with the 5 kids. Remember that show? I didn't like that show. First of all, I didn't like Cosby on the show. I couldn't stand the wife's personality. A know-it-all. And Cosby, I want to tell you, Cosby is a brilliant stand-up comic. He is brilliant. He did a thing about the first time he was left alone. He said, I don't need a babysitter, and his parents let him go. And how he listened to one of these mystery things on the radio about the chicken heart coming to eat Chicago, right, or something. And he lived, or Philadelphia, he lived in Philadelphia, and he's spreading jello around. It was just funny. Or he did a routine. He was a running back for Temple University, whose football team was at the time. He said, finally, we're on TV. So the coach comes to me and he says, comes to the team and says, remember, we're on TV. There are going to be 5-10 million people watching us. It's the first time we've been on TV. Don't touch yourself, you know where. You never know when the camera's on you, right? And he's just so funny. He said, second play, I go off tackle, somebody hits me, you know where. What was I going to remember? The coach said, I grabbed my head, right? So, and he goes over there, bandaging his head, and he's a brilliant stand-up comic. Then this show, he goes like this. They have played the theme song, and he's going. I couldn't believe it. I used to sit and listen to his stand-up records for hours. I wore them out. But he had another show. I don't know if you remember, it ran for a few years where he played a retired baggage handler for an airline, which is called The Cosby Show. And his wife and Madeline Kahn ran a store across the street. I don't know if you remember that show. And when you get Madeline Kahn and Bill Cosby together, I mean, talk about 2 brilliant comics. What a show. There was one time where she thinks he's poisoned himself, and she grabs him, and she's smashing him and hitting him, and he's, she's just throwing him around because she's trying to revive him. It was a great show. And there was the kid next door whose parents or mother, I think, father ran away, and his mother was an alcoholic, and he basically raised him, and the kid becomes a teacher. What was his name? Griffin. Griffin becomes a teacher, and they had a lot of stuff. You can see Cosby has a doctorate in education, by the way. Anybody see Fat Albert? Hey. That was instead of doing research, they allowed him to do that as his doctoral project. That was his doctoral project. That's how you know he's brilliant. What a show. I used to make my kids watch it. I want to go outside and play. No, sit and watch Fat Albert, right? Sit and watch. Brilliant show. And he's very interested. He has a doctorate in education. And there was one time there where he's sitting, there's a kid, one of Griffin's kids, and Cosby was retired, right? The Cosby character agrees to sit and work with this kid who's getting 30s on the class. And he goes, and the kid fails anyway. And the kid says, there's no point in studying, I don't want to do it. He said, yeah, we got a 68 this time. Or a 64, or what, you did much better. Doesn't matter, right? And the kid, from that experience, and the whole show was about trying how to convince the kid not to have this theory, this total theory of learned helplessness of external locus of control. I can't do it. Okay? It's really a good show. If you see reruns, there are a lot of shows that take place in school and in mental attitudes. And then at the end of the show, at the end of the series, this little girl shows up whose father, what's his name? The comic is her father. Who's the comic? Starts with an S. Sinbad. Sinbad plays her father, and she's also has these. It's really a good show, and it shows the whole question. It revolves around the idea of your attitudes and your emotions about yourself. There was another one, by the way. The Griffin character himself had a sense of can't do, and you go through a season or two of Cosby convincing him that he's really good at stuff, and what can you do? And of course, ultimately, that becomes the job of the teacher. To tell kids, hey, you're good at this. Let's try to do this. Have a positive self-efficacy, have a sense of can-do, and then to use that to move up through the zone and to say, hey, you can do this, you're good at this, and to put it off onto other things. Whew, I was on my soapbox again, did you notice? Or to say, well, you have a learning disability. You right? Can't kick a ball, you have dyscalculia. Right? Can't write, you have dysgraphia. You can't do math, you have dyscalculia. And inevitably what they're telling you, if you treat all kids the same, that's going to happen to some people. It's just bound to happen. Okay? What we're going to do next time is we're going to go to information processing next, I believe. Okay? This is another theory that came about, at least initially, as a reaction to Skinner. Okay, which was, you can't see what's going on in people's heads, forget it. I just want to look at behaviors. Okay, so we're going to look at that, and then after that, we're going to look at theories that are going to turn the idea on its head that development explains learning, learning explains development, and we'll say, no, that's wrong. Development explains learning. We develop, and that's what enables us to learn. Okay? And learning really is, and what we are is not really of a function of what we've taken from the environment, but of what's internal. How many people here think that basically we are what we've taken from the environment? We're a collection of what we learned from the environment, right? Are you a good artist? You think I could train you to be one? What? Yeah, how many people here think that we're basically come from the environment, right? Yeah? You think art is a talent, an innate talent? Anybody think that? Well, you got to make up your mind. So we're going to look at people who are going to say, some people are going to say, it's not that simple. What's innate, what's not innate, and after we do the information processing. Okay. See you next week. I'm sorry, I promised one other thing, the test. Even though I shouldn't be doing this on the tape, because we might change our mind about the test, but I'm pretty confident we won't. The test is basically a multiple choice format. There may or may not be some short answers at the end. In order to know whether there are or not short answers at the end, check the web page and it will tell you. See you next week.